how come more people aren't successful on this level of it?
One, it's not fast money, right? If you've ever played Monopoly the right way, you play Monopoly for like 4, 5, 6 hours.
Andre Green is a real estate expert dedicated to showcasing various strategies for capitalizing on real estate opportunities.
Is gentrification good in the neighborhoods that are being gentrified? Central Park was not. It's not a natural thing. That's man-made.
They built it on top of something.
What was it?
Neighborhoods.
I want my people to know, if you're gonna sell, don't be mad about you selling. Know why you're selling. If you've got enough time, it'll fix itself, right? But can you sustain the amount of time it goes from being bad to being good? There's more than one way to skin a cat, my mom used to tell me, right? So you don't have to do everything the same exact way, but you need to understand the basics of how everything works. Educate yourself. Invest in yourself first and foremost. You know, you never make a bad investment when you're betting on you.
So, Andre, welcome to Attractive Mindset, man. Glad to have you on the show. So, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me first and foremost, Rich. My name is Andre Green, also known as Andre Talkscreen on all the socials. I am a investor first and foremost. Started off in real estate, got into insurance, opened up a couple different businesses along the way, and I've done every job there is in real estate except for maybe like 2. But now I still have my portfolio. I still grow, I still buy, still invest, but I also teach people how to do it at a distance. So if there's a lot of people that I live and I'm from a very expensive state. So New York City is very expensive, as most of us know. I know you're from Brooklyn, so so you know how much it costs to buy something up there.
Absolutely.
To be a landlord is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So I've been in property management for probably 15, going on 16 years now, and I got my teeth cut in the heart of New York City. So I learned that business the hard way, dealing with crazy tenants and expensive buildings, but it taught me how do you really buy real estate and how to grow your money and become wealthy. And
so you're the type of person or real estate investor I've been waiting to talk to, because I've been hearing this term, squatters. What does that even mean? Like, I could never grasp my head around the concept of squatters have rights.
Yeah, so squatters' rights is what it's called, right? So a squatter is anyone that illegally occupies your property. So if, let's say you got a property, it's vacant for whatever reason, right? Or let's say it's not vacant, but someone goes in there and you don't have a lease with someone else. If they're in there for a certain amount of time, depending on your state, that changes. If they're in there for a long enough period of time, they turn on a utility, they now live there.
That's crazy.
And you can't just go in there and kick them out.
And that's legal.
It's legal. Yeah.
How is that possible?
Because the laws in most of our states suck.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there was a story floating around a couple of weeks ago about a lady in New York.
Yeah.
And she was with the camera crew from the news. They watched the squatters. She talked to them. And while she's there, the squatter called the cops on her.
Wow.
And the cops arrested her for illegally evicting a tenant when that wasn't the tenant. So yeah, it's a wild
insane
game. So you got to know what you get into.
Absolutely. And so that's one of the extreme crazy sides of real estate.
It's not that extreme.
That's not extreme. There's worse.
No, that's kind of common.
What?
Yeah. Well, extreme is when I heard a story recently, and I've seen it happen before, is you own a house free and clear, and someone illegally moves the ownership of that property from you to me. I own your house now and you have no idea. So I pull up to the house one day. I'm like, yo, we gotta get this guy out. You the squatter now.
Wow.
And it's your house. You pay for it.
How is that possible?
That's all fraud. But it happens.
Okay.
It's all fraud, but it happens, right? So essentially what they do is there's legal documents that you use to transfer property from one person to another in a regular sale. They'll get a hold of those, a blank form, and they'll fill it out. And then say that the property is being sold or assigned to another person. Quitclaim deed is a term you might hear with real estate, where someone's signing over their rights to a property to another person. When they do that, whether the person actually did it or not, that's why I said it's illegal, because you're supposed to have a notary, you're supposed to have certain things in place to verify that that's the person that's selling the house, so you don't have random people selling properties. But yeah, that was actually a story. I was in Atlanta. A guy was like, I think in his 80s.
Damn.
And the sheriff pulled up to his house one day. And his wife was in there. She's about in her 70s. He's 80. And they're like, yo, you got to leave.
Wow.
He's like, what do you mean I got to leave? I've been living here for 60 years. This is my house. I paid this thing off 40 years ago. And they was like, you got to go. And they put him out.
Wow.
They put him out. News camera went back there. The guy who bought the house was in the house. And he's like, I'm not taking any interviews. Like, I bought this property legally. So you don't know what the story is. Like, you don't know how he actually got it. He might have actually bought the property legally, but the person he bought it from didn't have the right to sell it.
Damn.
So now you got to go through a lawsuit and clear all this stuff up. Title got to get involved. There's a lot of stuff that happens when something like that happens.
Damn.
Yeah.
You see, we've had a good amount of real estate people on here, and I've never even heard us go down this path. And so I could tell this is going to be a good conversation. And so, you know, being from New York, you grew up in New York.
Born and raised, yeah.
Born and raised in New York.
Southside.
You had to throw that in there. Had to throw that in
Remind
there.
you every once in a while.
And so, growing up in New York, do you feel that shaped the way for your hustle going into certain things? Because I'm from New York too.
100%. 100%. You know, you coming from the concrete jungle for real. Like, that's not a joke. Like, if you're not outside moving and shaking, you're not getting nothing done. So you can't just wait for things to come to you. You got to go out and find the opportunity, make the most of it, and make sure that you moving in a certain way that, one, you being safe, and two, somebody's not coming to get you later.
Nah, facts.
So
what made you want to get into real estate?
I got into it by accident. I was a sophomore at St. John's University, also in Queens. And
y'all can have that one.
And I was looking for a job. Like, I was volunteering, doing random stuff. I was actually helping a lady out with a nonprofit, and she referred me to one of her friends. Kind of found this lady just was a broker, a real estate broker. I had no idea what this meant at the time, but she was a real estate broker. But she got into real estate at that time doing timeshares. So she used to sell a lot of timeshares. I don't know if you know what they are and how they work.
Yeah.
Pretty much you buy a piece of a vacation rental. She was a top producing timeshares person in Hawaii for like 10 years in a row.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Black Trinidadian woman. But
like MLM style or?
No, she's working for like RCI, like the big companies.
Okay.
She was doing it for them. So she came back to New York just to retire, live her life out, and she taught me, you know, she got my feet wet in the game in terms of, well, if you want to be in real estate, you can do apartment rentals. So I started doing Section 8 apartment rentals with her. She's the first person who taught me how to do it. We're talking about early 2000s, like 04, 03, 04. So she taught me the ropes of that. I did that for maybe like 6 months, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. You got people with no money telling you what they do and do not want. We need granite countertops. I need a chandelier. I need marble this. I'm like, bro, you ain't got no money. You got no money. You can't. Your rent might be $800. Nobody's giving you marble in that.
Yeah.
So did that for about 6 months, and I came back to her and told her one day, like, I can't do so more. She's like, it took you long enough because this is not for everybody, right? And that was my first lesson. There are so many different jobs you can have in real estate. Everyone's in real estate, but there's probably 1,000 different jobs you can have in real estate and still be in real estate. So what else is out there? She was one that sort of ran down the list to me. You know, mortgage broker, title company, appraiser, realtor, agent, broker, which are different levels of those things, and lender. You know, so she pretty much rolled out what it was to me. She's like, you know, this is no longer the place for you. So you gotta go figure out in the real world what else you can do. And I took that and ran with it.
Gotcha.
Went and started working for a mortgage company as a loan officer. Well, bounced around a couple of times first. Then found a place where I found another mentor. I was been blessed throughout my entire life to find good people that taught me the ropes properly. Like, that's the really important part about that. Because if you get the wrong mentor, they're gonna teach you the wrong things.
Facts.
And you might end up in the wrong place.
Facts.
So went and started doing lending as a loan officer, cold calling on the phone, boiler room style, making phone calls 4, 5, 6 hours a day, banging it out. And that sort of taught me how to, you know, one, deal with rejection, and then learning the finance game, because that's a different ball game. Like, real estate is not about buying a house. Real estate is financing money and figuring out how to make it move and how to make it work.
Got you.
Yeah. So that's from there. I went into property management when 2008 hit, because the mortgage game was a wrap for a good year and some change. It was bad time. We went from making $40,000 a month to $0 for 6-7 months in a row.
Is that when the stock market crashed?
Yeah, all of it crashed, but it was because of the real estate. The real estate market caused that domino to fall.
Damn.
So everyone felt it in 2008, but we saw it in 2007, like the end of the summer going into September. Banks just started, like, literally we have loans closing that day. You at the table signing documents, and the bank calls in like, yeah, we're not gonna fund that loan, so y'all can just go somewhere else. Like, what you mean you're not funding the loan? Like, everybody's here. Yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. And the next day, the bank's closed.
Wow.
It was a wild time.
Damn.
Yeah.
And so, growing up in Queens, New York, especially back in the day now, you know, you weren't ever pushed into certain categories or groups of individuals.
I mean, we all are, right? If you grow up in a neighborhood, you got friends for everything. You got friends for everything, right? So I mean, fortunate and luckily for me, I have Jamaican parents.
There it is.
Right? So there's only so much I can do outside before the streetlights come on.
Yeah.
Because they looking for me.
Yeah.
And they coming outside to get me, right?
Thanks.
So yeah, like I have friends in every walk of life as you can have in New York. And fortunate for me, they kept me on the straight and narrow when it came to, being in school. I was on basketball team, track team, all the sports. They kept us active. And me and my sister grew up the right way, never got into any major trouble. Never went to jail and that stuff. And, after high school, it was if you don't go to college, you won't get a job. And my pops drilled it in my head, you don't got an education, you gonna work in a mail room. So how long you want to work in a mail room? And he's old school, right? So there is no social media, there's no influencer. Those aren't things. You either get a solid job or you trying to scramble to make money. So that's what sort of got me on that trajectory. And then, like I said, by luck and chance, I got into real estate and fell in love with it. Got you.
Yeah. So what's your favorite category of real estate? You said you've pretty much done it all except for two.
Yeah. So the two I haven't done is I haven't done title work and I've never been an appraiser.
Okay.
Right. So everything else that I have done is been a sales or rental agent. I've been a sales agent to sell homes. I became a broker back in 2010. Lender, first as a loan officer, then as a lender for a bank. I did property management for a bank, commercial bank. And I did property manager for apartment buildings, right? And then single family homes. And the side that I love the most is lending, right? And as I matured in the business, I realized that I can lend my own money into deals, right? So you hear hard money terms, right? Hard money lender is one of the things. You can have a company that buys mortgages. That's another avenue off of lending, right? Those are the fields that I've learned where the money is, right? And you don't hear a lot of people talking about it because most people don't know about it. You have to be in the business for a while to understand what happens to your mortgage after you get one from Chase or a smaller bank, right? Where does it go? It actually gets sold on the stock market through a CMBS, right? To another company, and they put them all together. So you ever seen The Big Short?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, watch that movie when you get a chance. That's a really good movie. That gives you the breakdown of what happened in 2008.
Okay.
And it runs down how, nothing wrong against strippers, but they was getting 4 or 5 mortgages at once.
Damn.
Down here in Florida.
Damn.
And that was when they realized there was a really smart guy, I forgot the guy's name, that was on Wall Street. And he was the one that picked up on it. I think he made like $1.2 billion at the end of that whole thing.
Damn.
Because, man, he knew what he was looking at, right?
Yeah.
So, but lending is the part that's probably where I'm gonna spend the rest of my career. Buying real estate is fun. I hate the term passive investments, right? A lot of people like to spit that out and tell you like, oh, just getting real estate is passive. I can tell you right now, I have over 20 units that I own. I'm invested in over 4,500 units. There's nothing passive about being a property manager and owning property at all. The only person that's passive is the bank. They always win because the house always wins. So when you don't pay your rent, what happens? Property manager's calling you, landlord's calling property manager. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Where's the money? You know who's not calling you?
The bank.
The bank. You know why? They ain't worried. You gave them a certain amount of money to put down this property. If you don't pay them, they'll come get it later. Old school, right? The game ain't changed. Just did it on something different.
Nah, facts.
Yeah.
Nah, that's dope. How do you feel about land flipping?
Land flip is dope, right? So if you're in the right places for it, it's a really good thing to do because it's so cheap and there's no extra overhead on it, right? You have to have some money to do it though.
Yeah.
You're not getting a loan to buy land, but if you know what you're doing in the right places, it's a really I had friends and family from way back in the day doing that in Florida for a long time. They were just, picking up land, holding it for a little while and then flipping over. I got a wild one for you. I know a guy that was doing that with cemetery lots.
Got you.
He's buying plots of land in the cemetery and flipping those.
And so what would it, what would be a good place for somebody who's never been in real estate to start in real estate?
So in my book, the Long Distance Millionaire, right? There's a breakdown. So that book is a 12-step guide as to how to become a real estate investor, right? A long distance landlord, right? So to speak. But the first chapter of the book talks about mindset. You have to know what type of person you are and what works for you and how you are, right? That's the biggest piece because there's no set answer for any particular person. Some people are super hands-on. I want to fix everything myself. Other people, I want to be super removed. Nobody call me. I don't want to hear about nothing. So first and foremost, figure out what type of person you are. Once you've done that, then you can start to look at, well, these type of investments fit my personality type. And then because you heard the term a tired landlord?
No.
So a tired landlord is a term that means you've had a property for a while and you no longer want to do it. You no longer want to be a landlord. So you want to sell as fast as you can to get out of Dodge, right?
Yeah.
And that happens when, one, you might have properties in a rough neighborhood, or you got bad tenants, or you just weren't meant to be a landlord of that type of property, right? So maybe me and you should partner on a deal, right? Because you get to be super hands-off because you don't want to deal with, you want the cash flow, you want the money, but you don't do it on the phone calls.
Yeah.
So in our partnership, I like talking to people. I like dealing with the issues. Things come up. Don't worry, I'll fix it. End of the month, we get our rent, or beginning of the month, we get our rent, pay our expenses, we split the cash, right? That might be a great situation for you and something great for me. But everyone needs to figure out what type of person they are to find the right investment for them.
Got you. And so that makes me think is, we had somebody on here that came in and talked about M&As. And so is it possible to M&A into a real estate business?
So in which sense though?
And like if somebody has a portfolio.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not really M&A, but in mergers and acquisitions, what you're referring to, right? So it's not necessarily an M&A if I already own the portfolio, right? So essentially I'm selling you a piece of my performing portfolio already for whatever the reason is, right? Okay. So it's more of a JV partnership.
Okay.
But if you're doing that, hopefully you're doing that with someone who's already got the portfolio stabilized, right? Because you don't necessarily want to walk in somebody else's headache.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're just going to lose money. That's essentially what's going to happen if it's the wrong partner. But yeah, I mean, Grant Cardone, people don't realize that's what he does with a lot of his deals, right? He'll buy something first and then go out to the community and sell you a piece of something he already paid for.
Gotcha.
Right? So he's not waiting, because I've raised capital for deals, right? I've done syndications. And the hardest part is if I call you on Friday, I'm like, Rich, I got a deal. It looks good. I need to send me 50 grand on Wednesday. Right? And you're like, all right, cool. And I call you Wednesday, you're like, I got to think about it a little bit more. I don't have the time to wait for you to figure out if it makes sense. I got to move. So it's a better situation for me. I go and buy it. I'm like, Rich, remember that deal I told you about last week? I already bought it. These are the numbers. If you want to get in, get in. It might make sense for you. And if it doesn't do anything to me. Deal's already bought.
Because you got it.
Yeah. That's what Grant Cardone does, a lot of that type of stuff at a larger scale. But that's how his volume works. Because all he's really doing is recapitalizing himself, because the new investors come in and give him more money to go find another deal.
Got it. And so, why do you think it's more common for there's 3 categories that people now, which low key makes me run away from those categories.
Okay.
Where everybody online are like, oh, I'm a credit repair specialist. I'm a crypto guru, and I'm a real estate person.
Right.
Right. So
that's a great question.
When they say that, when it comes to real estate, what is the worst real estate deal to deal with?
That depends on who you are. Right. So there's no such thing as a bad real estate deal. Because I tell people this all the time. If you've got enough time, it'll fix itself. Right. But can you sustain the amount of time it goes from being bad to being good? This is not like a bad girlfriend. Right. You can buy a bad deal, and if it's in the right place, enough time goes by, that thing that looked crazy shot up $100,000 in equity, and you can sell it even though you weren't making any money on it in the beginning, sell it at the end and make money on it, right? So it depends on who you are. But the part that, like I said, I think I said it earlier, man, the part that drives me crazy about the business guru, the credit gurus, the crypto gurus, and the real estate gurus is that they make it sound so easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing. It's work. It's work. But you got to know what you're walking into, right? So if you're going to go start a business, start a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to make it seem nice and easy, but why are they making it look so nice and easy? What are they selling you?
This is true.
What are they selling you? They're selling you the education. They're selling you the hope that if you can go do it, I did it, you can go do it too. Start an event space. Go do wholesaling. Go buy a mobile home. Like, there's a lot of things you can do in real estate, but none of them are easy. It's work. It's a simple process, but it takes work. So if you're starting out, I tell everybody, wholesaling is what you need to understand, because essentially wholesaling, you're learning how to be a marketer for real estate. You're learning how to analyze a deal. You're learning how to get it into contract, the legalities of it. once you become a good wholesaler, or once you understand wholesaling, most people then pivot into being an investor owner. Now I want to be a landlord because they realize that I keep buying properties and I keep making money, but then I got to go back and hustle up and do it again the next month, right? As an owner, as a landlord, you don't keep doing that. After a while, you build up cash flow, you build your portfolio. If you don't want to get up next month, you still got 15, 20 grand hitting your bank account, you'll be okay.
And so how do you approach the new school real estate? And by new school, I mean newer tactics like Airbnb.
Oh, that's a great question. So I was around in real estate before Airbnb existed, right? So I've seen the transition on a couple of different fronts. One on the lending side, and then two as a property manager, because I manage apartment buildings in Manhattan. So when Airbnb got really hot, the building owners were like, yo, stop renting out my units to these random people that are, I mean, were you still in New York around that time? People were just throwing parties in Airbnbs?
Nah.
Yo, it was crazy what they were doing. I mean, they were throwing full-on Project X parties in Airbnbs because it wasn't their place. Yeah. And there was no real repercussion of it, right? You might have banged them for the cleaning fee. Yeah. But that's about it. What else you gonna do? You're not going to somebody's house to go make them come back clean it up. So that was a hard thing. And I mean, unless you understand the business, you got to look at how much revenue is being lost by hotels. They're the biggest taxpayers in most cities. So they got a huge problem with Airbnbs, which is why cities like Atlanta damn near outlawed doing Airbnbs for a certain period of time, where like if you live in this area, no Airbnbs at all, period. Damn. And then they have the anyone who has a HOA, homeowner association, they've also cut down on Airbnb. So it just depends on where you're at. My personal opinion, if you don't own it, you're at risk. So if you want to do Airbnb arbitrage, because they love selling arbitrage. Yeah. You know, keep in mind, beginning of 2020, if I had 5 Airbnb rentals that I rented from someone's house and nobody can travel, what I got to do on April 1st? I got rent to pay. Yeah. For 5 different places that I got no money coming in for. So it's a huge risk. I mean, it sounds easy, and everybody likes to tell you get in OPM, which does work, but you know, no money out of pocket, and you can go make $1 million a year. It's possible.
And what about the methods behind like a duplex, triplex, quadplex? You know, all of those stuff. Because I'm not in real estate yet. Okay. But everybody's always telling me, "Oh, Rich, you should."
Yeah, I mean, you should. Right. So I think the stats are crazy on how many millionaires and billionaires are in real estate. The part they don't tell you is that most of them didn't make money in real estate. They made money outside of real estate and then parked it in real estate. So my advice to you is the more doors, the better. Right. So if you can buy one property with four units or 4 doors, do that. And here's why I tell you to do that. If you buy a single family home and that one person stops paying rent, you've got a mortgage payment to pay for that entire property. But if you got a 4 unit, the likelihood that all 4 tenants stop paying at the exact same time are highly unlikely unless all 4 of them are working together. Got it. So one person stops paying rent on a 4 unit, the other 3 paying rent, you're not kicking out money for the mortgage payment. You got to go deal with that one tenant, but you're still going to be able to cash flow, pay your mortgage, pay the water bill, pay the expenses, and life goes on. You got to get rid of the tenant or whatever the situation is. People lose their jobs, life happens. But you'll be in a safer position, right? And everyone's starting out like, oh, I just want one to see how it goes. That's the highest risk level you can possibly get getting into real estate.
And so, you know, I have no idea about any of this, so this might sound a little crazy, but when you have the 4 places in like a quad, you only pay 1 mortgage?
Well, if you bought one house that has 4 places, yes, you pay 1 mortgage. If you bought 4 different houses, then you got 4 different mortgages, right? But you can have, I mean, I'm not from down here, right? So I don't know how many places you guys have like that down here, but in up Northeast, we've got a lot of vertical living spaces, right? So 2, 3, and 4 families are very common. Brownstone, 3 families all over the place. Yeah, you guys, you see that up Northeast. Yeah. I think down here you guys are kind of a little bit more spread out. Yeah. So if you have a 2 family, it's side by side. Yeah. Or a 4 unit, it's you guys got some weird shapes down here for properties, but everything's on one level, but they're all together. So if it's got 1 roof, you normally have 1 mortgage.
Okay, so it's different roofs.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so, you know, over your overall journey, you live out here now?
No, I'm in New York still.
Are you still in New York?
Yeah, I'm looking to do some investments down here. So I came down, check out Miami. I heard it's a great place to live.
Miami, I don't know. South Florida, yes, 100%.
Okay.
Whoever told you Miami, that's your twin. You know what I'm saying?
All right. Where you from?
My people is Jamaican and
All
Trinidadian.
right.
So,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? But
you be at Carnival?
I'll be outside a little bit. I'm the city one. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
feel
hey,
you.
but being out here, investing in things out here, where would you say you feel your investments would make the most money for you?
So you wanna go where you get the most bang for your buck, right? But that's part of the reason why I wrote the book. I realized that coming from an expensive market, I had to learn how to. Already knew how to invest, so now I had to find places that it made sense for the numbers, right? You got to know how to do your analysis properly. So that pushed me outside of New York City, right? First started looking in Jersey. That didn't work too much because Jersey taxes are really high. Then I went to Connecticut. Connecticut numbers looked a lot better, but then I got some feedback from my network. Like I was looking at places like Hartford and Bridgeport. And if you're in real estate, you're in Connecticut, you know that those areas are a little bit rougher, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily where you want to be, but that depends on what type of landlord you want to be, right? That was when I learned about what type of landlord am I going to be. This is before I even bought anything. All I had at the time was my personal home that I bought in Queens, right? So then I went south looking at Philly because Philly was hot. I mean, this is mid 2000s. Philly was a place that everybody was talking about. Philly and Baltimore. Everybody's talking about it back then. And I started taking trips down there. And I realized that the numbers were a lot less, but the rents were pretty decent for what you were paying for the property. You can buy a property back then, 20, 30, 40 grand. They're paying $700 a month in rent.
Sheesh.
Numbers make a lot of sense at that point. And that I zoned in and honed in on those areas, started buying more and more properties down there.
Got it. And so would you say, how do I want to phrase this? Would you say it's better to, no, I'm going to circle back to this one.
Okay.
So pretty much when you made this book, The Long Distance Millionaire, step-by-step process to become a millionaire through real estate and tenants.
Yeah.
Where's the long distance part come from?
So I started buying rentals in a different state, right? So I live in New York. I never moved to Delaware or Pennsylvania. And I started buying property. So now what are the things I got to deal with as an owner at a distance, right? Pipe breaks. I can't just get up, leave my bed and go fix this thing, right? So now I got to deal with property management. Where am I finding my contractors? How am I vetting these people, right? Where am I finding my tenants? How has that happened? How am I collecting rents? So there's a lot of pieces that happen when you start buying property that you can't just drive to on your own to go get it fixed. Now, the beautiful thing about what I learned through this process is if I can do it 2.5, 3 hours away, I can do it 9, 10 hours away. I can do it 15 hours away. I can probably do it anywhere in the world at this point because I know what the steps are and I know how to set up my process and procedures and structure to operate my properties, which become businesses pretty much.
So would you be considered a middleman?
No, because I'm the owner. You're in a space right now. You deal with a property management company.
Yeah.
The property management company reports to someone. They might be the owner, but there might be another person that's not a part of the property management company that owns the building. So would you call the owner the middleman, or would you call the property manager the middleman?
I can see where that's going. I don't know. I think there's multiple middlemans because even though I'm renting this from someone who's renting this, people rent this from me.
So you are also a middleman, right?
Absolutely.
Right? So you come about a sublease at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of real estate. It's a simple complex. Simple part is you own a building, people rent it from you, and you make money. The complex part is that you can have multiple people leasing things from you within the same space, and everyone can benefit from it, right? You've got benefit because you lease the whole space. The property manager is making money because they're managing the space. The owner is making money because they own the real estate. And we even talk about taxes and depreciation, how all this stuff rolls into the real money, which is lowering your taxable income. That's a whole nother, that's a PhD lesson and how to really make money and keep money in this country, right?
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing when you get in and you really understand, which is why people are probably telling you you'll get into real estate.
Oh yeah.
There's some side benefits.
I took a hit this tax season.
So here's one of the things we didn't talk about, but I'll touch on it, right? So my background's pretty vast, right? I told you about the real estate stuff, but I'm also an insurance broker, right? So I got into insurance on the back end of my real estate career because I realized that the money is all connected. So most people don't know this, but some of the biggest owners in real estate in America and the world are insurance companies.
Wow.
They own all the big buildings. They lend money on the big buildings. Now, the question is, why is that and how do they get involved? Insurance companies make billions of dollars a year. You can't spend billions of dollars a year unless you buy really big things. And what's the biggest thing that you see around you? Buildings.
Yeah.
So they'll lend on apartment buildings, commercial space, warehouse space, land. They'll lend on all that stuff, right? Depending on the criteria for what it is. But when I started understanding how the mechanics of the money work, I started using insurance in my real estate business. So I set up policies for people, and I can go and teach you how to borrow money from your policy to invest in real estate. But I'm going to show you how to do that tax-free. I'm going to show you how to grow your money tax-free. I'm going to show you how to pass it on to somebody else tax-free. It's a different ball game when you got that $1 working in 3-4 places. Now you get to sit back and relax because you don't need 40, 50 houses.
Yeah.
You just need the right structure to make those little dollars work for you every time they go outside to play.
No, that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And so, with this, the whole dynamic of how the world works now, we live in a day and age where there's 3 categories of people, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But definitely 3. You have those who are still in 9 to 5s, and they're majority.
Yep.
You have those who have entered entrepreneurship, call themselves now an entrepreneur, and make me hate the title for it. And then you have those who are really out here doing stuff,
doing the work. Yeah.
And so if getting money and doing all these things are so easy, especially with a lot of these dynamics in real estate and how you've broken it down, how come more people aren't successful on this level of it?
So, I mean, one, it's not fast money, right? It's a slow money game. If you've ever played Monopoly the right way, you play Monopoly for like 4, 5, 6 hours.
Absolutely.
Like that's an all night game. You better get the drinks out, get the chips going, because you're gonna be here for a while. Monopoly's a true reflection of what the real estate investing it looks like. It's a long term thing. It's not like playing Uno. Like you're not gonna have 10 cards and be out in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So one, how are you learning about the industry, right? Are you educating yourself? You got to invest in your education first and foremost. Part of the reason why I wrote the book was that I have friends and family that watched me go through the process, right? And when I started out, I was trying to do it like everyone says online. OPM, go get your friends to give you some money and go buy a piece of property. I'm like, oh, that sounds easy. Let me go do it. I went and told to my friends and my family, my pops especially, he told me kick rocks and go back outside.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not giving you no money. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And she was right? So I had to go learn. I had to go educate myself and learn from people that were already doing it. You know what I mean? I'm reading books. I'm doing everything I need to do, meeting the right people. And piece by piece, you get all the puzzle pieces you put together, and now you got a deal, right? So when I got to a place where I don't have a 9 to 5, right? I didn't leave my job. My job retired me early, right? And they used COVID to do it. But it was the best thing that happened for me because of where I was at that time, right?
Got you.
I was in the middle of 5 renovation projects, long distance. I'm renovating properties while I live in New York that are in Delaware. And at the time, I needed to be there. I didn't realize that until I didn't have to go to work anymore. So now, if you got the right mentor teaching you the steps, right? First and foremost, I'm always about learning the process and then implement the process. Most people, they don't want to learn the process. They just want to just start doing stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're doing the wrong things in a game that can be very expensive, you're going to lose quick and hurt hard. So learn the game, learn the process, right? The book gives you all the steps. Learn the process. Figure out who you are, what type of investor you are, then figure out what type of properties you want to buy. A property, B property, C property. Those are the levels of the categories, right? A quality property is something that's, let's say, in your favorite place. Let's use Miami, for example, right? Brickell Center, right? Very expensive. When I say A property, think of high rents, lots of amenities.
Yeah.
Right. That's what a property would be. B property is not as expensive as downtown South Beach, Miami, but you come out a little bit further. You're still getting a nice apartment. You got some amenities. It's in a good neighborhood, mostly working class people. Everybody's got jobs, doing good things. You go from B to C. Now you've got a mixed bag of the tenant mix. You got some people that are working on a come up, maybe a lower end type of a job. You probably got some Section 8 people in there also. By the way, I love Section 8. I built my portfolio on Section 8. I will teach people how to do that on Section 8 because
that's government funding.
That's government funding, right? That's a different ball game because I'm trying to lower the risk because I'm at a distance.
Yeah.
Like if you're not paying rent and you got a job, whatever, you lose your job or whatever, I'm chasing you for your rent. If the government's paying 80% of your rent, I'm chasing you for 20%. You might not pay the $100.
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you every time I see you about the $100, but I'm not worried about the $100.
Yeah.
Eventually it'll come back in, right? But so that's on a sea level property. And then D is we in a war zone. I mean, I don't want to name any neighborhoods, but
Cali block.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Queens.
You got problems there, right? You're not going over there unless you're strapped up. Yeah. So this might not be the place you want to invest unless you're that type of investor.
Yeah.
Because you can make money in all of the categories, but what kind of investor do you want to be? What kind of headaches do you want to deal with?
True.
Yeah.
And so do more people, well, I don't guess I should say more people. Is more money spent in residential real estate or commercial real estate?
Spent in what way?
Like people purchasing it for portfolio sake.
That's a great question. Numbers wise, just sheer numbers, commercials way more expensive.
Yeah.
So when they move a deal, I think Blackstone recently bought a $10 billion portfolio from a real estate company. Nobody's buying a $10 billion.
But it's only a few people doing stuff
like
that.
Right. So you might have, but even here's a real conversation that we can get to if you want to. Over the past 5 to 6 years, if you study what's been happening, Blackstone and big private equity companies have been buying a lot of single family homes. But when they buy a single family home, they don't buy one home. They buy a neighborhood.
Damn.
So they're buying communities, 40 houses, 100 houses, 200 houses, 1,000 houses, not 1,000 apartments, 1,000 houses. When that happens, that real estate sort of leaves, it like vanishes into thin air. And this is why I say that. If you're a private equity company and you bought 1,000 houses at once, you're not going to sell them one at a time when you're trying to exit those properties. You're going to sell them at 1,000 in a group of 1,000. Who can buy 1,000 houses at one time? Only another private equity company.
Yeah.
So once those properties leave the market, the small mom and pop guys, they're not seeing those properties again.
Got you.
So whatever's left over is what you get to choose and pick from, right? So their criteria is normally B and C, but normally B properties what they buy, like good neighborhoods, working class people. So the volume of deals, I can't answer that in a straight answer, right? You got to look at the data where you're at in the country and all that good stuff. But you got a lot of investors out here buying properties, and you got a lot of big investors buying a bunch of properties too. So the money's gonna keep moving regardless of what happens.
So that makes me think of something. Is gentrification good for? I'm throwing the questions at you.
All these crazy questions now.
Is gentrification good for real estate investing?
Gentrification is amazing for real estate investing. But the question you're asking me is gentrification good in the neighborhoods that are being gentrified? If, let's use my home city, right? Brooklyn, mid-90s. You can buy a brownstone in Brooklyn between $250,000 and $400,000. Any brownstone, anywhere. The same brownstones in 2006 to 2012 were worth $1 million. The people that were buying those brownstones look nothing like the people that were in those brownstones.
Yeah.
So did they force them out? Before anybody even goes there, if anybody's old enough to notice, then they're going to come for me like, whoa, everybody that was living where Barclays is at no longer lives there. This is true. Because when they built Barclays, they completely knocked down like blocks of homes to move people out. Eminent domain is the term that they use for that. They've done that hundreds of times over hundreds of years. Central Park was not, it's not a natural thing. That's man-made.
And they built it on top of something.
What was it? Neighborhoods. So my insurance company is called Seneca Village. Seneca Village was a neighborhood that was inside of Central Park before Central Park existed.
Wow.
Right? They knocked down hundreds of homes to build Central Park, right? So they use eminent domain as a reason why they can just take things because it's for the better good of the community. That's a part of gentrification. It's not the best for everybody. But if I'm a homeowner from Trinidad, I came here in the late 70s, I bought my brownstone in Brooklyn, they can't force me to sell unless it's eminent domain. Yeah. So if I don't want to sell, I'm not going to sell, right? But then, there are communities that will come and knock on your door, and they're gonna offer you $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 for a house you paid $200,000 for.
And you're gonna do it.
Most people do. Right. I'm not seeing that kind of money anywhere else, and they do that because they're uneducated about the process. My generation, your generation especially, understands what happens when you hold on to the real estate. And you, first and foremost, you offer me $600. Why are you trying to give me so much?
Facts.
Right? What am I missing about this whole transaction that you want to give me so much? So I don't think that gentrification will ever happen the way it's been happening in certain neighborhoods. But then you got to realize that where they do gentrification are places that people have no money. They can't afford to say no because this money pays for a lot of things, takes care of a lot of people. So they'll pick up and go move and live somewhere else. So yeah, as an investor, I'm all for gentrification. You got better neighborhoods, you got better this, you got better that. But as a community activist and supporter, I want my people to know if you're going to sell, don't be mad about you selling. Know why you're selling. Right?
So that triggers the second part of that question. You know, does certain companies and certain people buying a lot of these residential and, you know, commercial real estate things split our communities?
Split.
Because versus when we grew up, just like you said, there was a certain demographic in these brownstones, in these, you know, neighborhoods and all of these things. But the people that have bought them, you know, a lot of places in New York have turned to Jewtown. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of places everywhere else, I'm sure, have had the same thing. Even Wynwood now, you know, from out here, you know, Wynwood's been dealing with a lot of stuff lately and whatnot. And so we lose culture a little bit.
Not a little bit.
A lot of it.
A lot. So what's the solution to that question?
Solution to that question is, are real estate investors evil?
Are real estate investors evil? Bro, like I said, man, nobody's forcing you to sell, right? So you got a choice. You have a choice, right? And this is a bigger conversation, but if you're not struggling for money, does the bag make a difference to you?
Depends.
Depends on what?
Generational wealth.
But does it make a difference to you?
To me,
you own it now.
No.
You got the bag now. Does it make a difference to you now?
No.
Most people aren't looking about the next generation. They're thinking about them right now. So if I don't have any money and you come to me with a bunch of money, I'm looking at taking this money and going to live somewhere else. Now, if you look at the migration of what happens in these neighborhoods, right? Canarsie. The amount of nurses that owned homes in Canarsie, probably in the 90s, that sold homes and moved to where? Florida. Because you can take the same money. So I bought my house for $200,000. Some guy bought it from me for $650,000. And I can move to Florida and buy a whole house for $300,000. I got $300 extra grand sitting in my bank account. Yeah, this makes sense for me. And if you're talking about generational wealth, you own a house free and clear in Florida. Just go to Florida. They're not stressed about that. It's a different life for them, right? So it depends on the conversation, right? But if we're talking about real generational wealth, we got to start talking about insurance. We got to start talking about legacy planning. We're talking about trusts, estates. Wills are horrible for people, but everybody loves to get them. It's more than just the real estate. Yes, the real estate it's sexy. So everybody sees the Lambos and the Rolls Royces. They think you got all the money, but that's not the only place these people are using their money.
Nah, absolutely. And so that makes me think of, you know, if you have investments in all of this real estate stuff and, you know, people or cost of living, as we know from back in the day, 100,000 I think is equivalent to $157,000 now.
More than that,
I think it's more than that for real. But if you have all of these people moving, and say you have a building in New York, you have all of these people leaving New York because it's so expensive, and they're coming to places like Florida and Texas and all of these other spots and whatnot. You know, what happens to the dynamic of owning that real estate over there?
So as an owner, you've got the choice, right? So think of it this way. You essentially own the space we're in right now, right? Because you lease it, so it belongs to you. If you want to come in here after 2 years and change the paint colors on this wall, you can do that, right? If you want to say this is now a podcast space, now it's a gym. Might be an issue for the landlord, but because you're the one occupying the space, you have the say of what you want to do with the space. You can transform it into anything that you want it to be. So when COVID hit, A lot of office building owners had problems because there's no one in the physical office space. So why would I, as a tenant, continue to pay you rent if the people that are supposed to be in there are not in there, and we're barely making money? Now there's a shift. So as the owner, you have the ultimate right to say, 1, I'm going to sell it. 2, I want to convert it. I'm flex space. I want to do something different with it now. Like, you have that ability as the owner to do so. As a tenant, you're screwed. Because if the landlord comes and you say, I need my space back, there's nothing you can say. You got a lease. When's this lease up? All right, we're going to let you out early, or we're going to fight with you to get you out. That's the only 2 options you have as a tenant. So long term, I know there's a lot of people telling you out here right now, buying real estate is the worst thing you could possibly do. Rent everything, yada, yada, yada. We are becoming a renter nation. Yeah. What happens when you have a renter nation is you don't have any say-so in how you live and when it comes to certain places or where you can go and do certain things. So be very careful about owning nothing and feeling free. Yeah. You're not that free. You're kind of stuck in many ways.
And so what would you say has been your worst deal in real estate?
Worst deal? So I tend to not lose money on deals because I'm a buy and hold landlord, right? So I'll hold properties for a long period of time, which means, like I said, time is my best friend. The longer I go out, is the more it'll recover. But have I bought deals? Like, I bought a building in 2020, August 2020, I closed. I bought a 5-unit building and I bought it. It was in bad shape and on a drug block. There was drug dealers living in the property. There was drug users living in the property. When I bought it, I thought I was going to spend maybe $150,000 to fix it up. And then I was going to refi it out, Burr method. If you're familiar with that, I can go over it. If you're not, I'll go over that in a second. So I thought I was going to spend $150 to fix it up. It should be worth like $600 when I'm done. Right. So I bought it for $140, spend $150, and it should be worth $600. When I got into that deal, I didn't do enough due diligence. So I bought the property, and as soon as I closed, like the next day, I got a phone call from the fire department. Because they knew because of the title work and the process of closing that it was being sold to a new person. Damn. And as soon as we closed, they called me like, you got all of these violations on this building. Damn. And then when I started having a conversation with them, well, you got to talk to the Department of Buildings too, because the fire department had their own issues with the owner before. Now the Department of Buildings got a different set of issues. And then this particular property is in a historic neighborhood. And being from New York, we have a lot of those, right? So I was familiar with when someone said to me, it's on a historic neighborhood. I'm like, oh man,
you can't do that.
I'm screwed now and stuff. Because you got to have certain special windows, special doors. Outside has to look a certain way. But all of those things that they wanted blew my budget from $150 to $340. Now I got to come up with this extra money because my hard money lender don't want to hear nothing about that. Yeah, he's like, yo, you bought this. This is the numbers you gave us. You need to go figure it out. But keep in mind, you don't pay us back in time, we coming to get that. So now I had to figure it out. So that was probably the worst deal I ever did in terms of just the sheer numbers of it. It was a nightmare. But I got out of it. I had to spend all my own money to finish the project, but we got it done and I refied it. So the Burr method, right? So it's buy, rehab, rent, and then refinance. That's the
rehab is like fixing it up?
Yes, that's the renovation part. So that's the process that a lot of people online talk about. You can buy something that's pretty much run down, and when your value add comes in from you renovating it and making it worth more money. So you buy something that's ain't been touched since like 1982, you make it 2024 HGTV standards, now it's worth more money, someone else wants to buy it. So you can do that as a flipper because that's how flippers make their money. They buy it cheap, fix it up, and then they sell it for more. As an owner, you can do the same thing, but not sell it. You just refinance it to get your initial down payment and money back out of it, and now you rent it. So you're gonna receive all that appreciation and money over time because you still own it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And so you said you teach this, right?
Yes.
And so what portions of it do you go over?
So right now I primarily focus on anyone that wants to be an investor, right? An investor in the sense of you want to be a landlord. What type of landlord? We covered that in the very first chapter. Very first phone call, we're figuring out what type of person are you to then determine what path you need to go down to be an investor. There's essentially four different types of mindsets to be an investor. So the book and what I talk about predominantly right now is like, how do you gain the ability and know-how to be an investor, to own property? Because for me personally, I think that's the biggest thing for our community, is that we need to own the real estate. It's great to make a lot of money. It's great to do all these things. But at the end of the day, they're not making any more land. I don't care what you're doing. They're not making no more.
Unless you go to the moon.
Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you right now, the first people who's going to be there are real estate investors.
You're right.
That's what's going to be there first, because they understand how the money works. So they have the money already. They're going to get there first and then start buying stuff up. And with crypto and everything else, we're going to have a whole system of how you can tokenize everything.
Nah, facts. And so we've gotten to the part of the podcast where we call it gem drop. Okay. And so if people make it this far, because our attention spans are now less than that of a goldfish, we like to reward them. And so Absolutely. You have coaching, you have everything. And so if somebody wanted to get into investing into real estate, give them the first set of steps as if they were joining your coaching program today. Okay. And go over the 4 mindsets you mentioned.
Okay. So the first thing I would tell them to do is figure out, first and foremost, what type of investor do you want to be, right? Very first, you got to understand your mindset to then start investing. The second thing I will tell you to do is figure out your freedom number. That is the biggest part of that conversation, because you need to know how much money you need to bring in passively, right? I mean, outside of your 9-to-5 job, that's going to set you free or get you out of the rat race. That number for most people, on average, between $3,000 to $5,000 a month. People's bills aren't super, super high. Yeah. Everybody might be tight because we're not getting paid that much. But if you can figure out what that freedom number is, and now we're going to break it down. How many properties or doors do you need to own to get you to this freedom number? That conversation sets you on a path of, now I see the end target. Now, how do we get to that end target, right? So do I want to be hands-on investor? That's one type. Do I want to be completely passive, right? Do I want to be an in-between, or do I want to be a property manager owner, right? So you can wear multiple hats in these roles. But first and foremost, you got to figure out who you are, what number you're trying to get to, and then where's the geographic location that you need to be to accomplish that goal. Because this works no matter where in the country you live. The real goal for people is that if you live in a market that's affordable, you don't got to go anywhere. Everything's in your backyard, right? So middle of the country is a sweet spot for a lot of folks. Illinois, Texas, Arkansas, Alabama, like that's all of that Rust Belt stuff. It's very affordable to buy, and they have really good rents. And then we start talking about Section 8. What type of tenant do you want? I want a cash paying tenant. You're going to find a lower end person who is working like a cash job. Yeah. I want someone who has a solid income. So that's like a B caliber property. They've got a solid income. We could talk about qualifying them in terms of how to look at their credit, how to review landlord-tenant laws, and then landlord-tenant credit reports. Like that's a whole nother thing you need to look at when you're getting someone into your property, because the worst thing you can do is pick a bad person. Off the rip, you're going to have problems next month 1, right? So those are things you need to look at when you're getting into being a real estate investor. I am a person that upfront will tell you all of the possible pitfalls, headaches, and issues you may have. Why do I try to scare people away? So that you know what you're walking into. I want you to be aware of what could go wrong. Now, I'm going to tell you all of the beautiful rosy sides of things later on, because you're not going to be mad at me when your tenant's paying you every single month and you got an extra $5,000 in your bank account. Yeah. But you definitely be mad at me if the next month after you put them in there, they're not paying rent and you got to pay the mortgage payment. So I hope I answered that question.
No, yeah, you did. You definitely did. That made me think of something else as well. In teaching people how to do this, what's a good time frame for them to gauge? Because you said it's a long-term game. And so if somebody gets into this understanding it's a long-term game, what's the point people can start seeing money being made back?
Oh, I mean, I have students that are done in 3 months.
Oh, damn.
Right. Okay. But those people they're ready. Right. So everyone doesn't start the race at the same place. So if you're a person who you've got a 9-to-5, and about the 9-to-5 thing, right? I was always a proponent of having a 9-to-5. I never want to leave my job. I was making close to 6 figures after bonuses and everything like that. I was paying all of my bills, and everything else was just gravy, extra money. I was going on vacations. I'm buying all the Louis, all the Gucci, all of that stuff, right? Because I didn't have anything else to do with my money.
Yeah.
But I had the money to spend on it. So, but I have students that they can do it in 3 months. So when they get to me, they understand the mechanics of how to invest, right? They need to sort of tighten up the actionable steps, right? But they've got good credit, they've got down payment money, and they sort of know that they want to be an investor. But now we need to hone in what type of investor and how far away are you comfortable? Because depending on the area, this might not work for you based on what type of person you are. So you might have to look somewhere else. But yeah, I have people, like I said, that literally from start to finish, bought a property, closed, got a tenant in there collecting rent within the 3-month process. Then I have other ones that are in it for 6, 7, 9, 10, 12 months, a year, right? It just depends on where you're at and how risk averse are you? Because there is risk in investing.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees. So you got to sort of figure out that process, and then I'll walk you through it.
Got it. Okay. Do you have any kids?
I do. My son is 17. Will be graduating from high school in 2 months, and he's off to college.
And do you want him to take up the real estate?
I mean, I would love for him to take up real estate, but not in the set. He should have a super fast track to figuring out what works, but he's a different person. So, I mean, he's enjoyed all the fruits of my labors, right? But he might look at it like, I don't want to do none of that stuff.
Yeah.
So he gets that this thing makes money, but I don't necessarily want to deal with any of these type of people or any of these headaches because he sees me in and out of town a bunch of times. I'm looking at stuff, I'm buying stuff, I'm dealing with phone calls. You got to deal with the property manager, stuff like that. So yes, do I want him to understand real estate to the sense that I know I need to own it and my legacy is to pass it on to him anyway?
Yeah.
But he should know, how the money works and then how to use it properly. If you don't want to manage him himself, then don't manage him. Get someone to keep it in place or sell everything, but put it in a place that's going to make the money keep working for you. There's more than one way to skin a cat. My mom used to tell me, right? So you don't have to do everything the same exact way, but you need to understand the basics of how everything works. And that's one of the big pieces when it comes around to the education that I like to educate people on, because my background is super diverse in different parts, but it's all related to money, right? It's all connected, which is why my handle is Andre Talks Green. Yeah. I talk about money in a lot of different ways. So I'm not like a one-trick pony. Depending on where you're at, I can help you learn something or do something a little bit different that's going to change the way you handle your money.
And so how do you feel about the quote then, tough times create tough men, tough men create good times create weak men, weak men create tough times.
I absolutely 100% agree with that statement.
And so how does that line up with you and your son?
Yeah, we're going to talk about legacy planning now, right? So our parents don't necessarily understand how you pass wealth and money from one generation to the next. I understand it because I've studied it. I've learned it from very high level, high net worth people, right? And trust fund babies are a real thing, right?
100%.
How did they become a trust fund baby? Somebody along the line had a bunch of money and sort of just gave it to somebody else. When you give money to people with no type of rules or parameters to it, they tend to act crazy.
Definitely do.
Right? It is what it is. So, I mean, my son already done told him, I got cars, I got stuff. They're mine. You want some of this stuff? You're going to have to do some of these things to get some of this stuff. I'm not just giving you stuff just because, right? So I got his own benchmarks for him, right? You need to get into school, you need to get a degree. Granted, college is not what it used to be, but I need you to check off some of the things so that I know you've got a solid foundation when stuff does get past you, so you're not just acting out here doing things all willy-nilly and it never makes it past you.
Yeah.
So trust is a great way to do that, though. Like I don't set up trust, but I know a lot about them because that's the way that you need to pass on the wealth to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, everybody got them. Google, Amazon, all these holding companies. And the next big thing is what? The foundations. You got Rolex, that's a nonprofit. NFL is a nonprofit.
All these places when you find out how these things are set up, right? And they've been secrets for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you realize, wait, how is the NFL a nonprofit? You got to go back. It's a lot of conversation for a different time, but that's the level of education that I want my son to have. So you ain't got to do it, but you need to understand it, right? And once you get a solid understanding of things, how things work, you know what's for you, you know what's not for you. You know where to jump in, it's like jump rope. You don't got to be in every single time, but you know when to jump in and jump out because everything's not for you. That's why I never got to Airbnb space. It's not for me. It doesn't work for me.
Copy. Okay. Yeah. So no. And the last question I would have is, how do people go about proper funding for things like this?
Oh, no, you asking the good questions now. So there's a couple of different schools of thought when it comes to this. The popular one right now is OPM, using other people's money. You can go out and get business funding and use business funding for your investment. The part that they don't tell you on Instagram and TikTok is that when you do that, you have high leverage on your property. So I'm just give it to you with some numbers, right? I bought a house for $100,000. I'm not going to go into the whole 3.5 FHA down payment stuff. It's a regular 20% down payment.
Yeah.
You got to come up with 20 grand. The bank's going to give you 80,000. So I take a credit card and I use that to buy for my down payment on the 20 grand. The bank gives me the rest. So my mortgage payment, for argument's sake, I don't know what the numbers are. Let's say on an $80,000 mortgage, it might be $250.
Okay.
Right? $250 is my mortgage payment. My tenant's going to pay me $800. Straight math, those numbers look pretty good.
Yeah.
The part they leave out is that your 20% down payment is attached to a credit card. You've got another payment that's due.
Yeah.
So that $250 is a mortgage. Your $20,000 credit card payment will start off super low because they're telling you to get the 0% interest. You ain't got to worry about it for 18 months. So now it goes from 20 grand is like what, $200? 200 shoots up to 400. It doubles. So your $250 payment is not $250, it's $250 plus $200. So your $250 payment is now $450. Your rent is $800. Now your credit card payment doubles to $400. You're at $650 on the $800 hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So your margins get squeezed all the way down. If you don't know this going into it, you thinking you Gucci. You're not. If you have one thing break or the tenant stop paying, you've got a huge issue now. Which is why I say the more doors, the better. Right? You've got a huge issue with your margins on your investment. On top of the fact that no one tells these landlords on social media that you got to pay for water and all these things up front. Yeah. You're front loading it for the tenant in many cases. So that $150 that you thought you had in profit, that's gone when you got to pay the water bill because a tenant who does not own the property is running the bath for the kids for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Right? They got the wash machine. They're washing everybody on the block clothes. Like that's the type of stuff that people do in properties, right? So that's the first way, OPM, other people's money, but on using credit. OPM, when I'm using investor money, is a little bit different, but the mechanics are kind of the same. I'm going to borrow money from you. We put money into a deal. Now, when I'm dealing with a person, you have a different conversation because I can bring you in as an equity partner.
That's like S Corp.
No, not even the S Corp, just in terms of the ownership of the property, right? So I'm going to own it in an LLC, not just my own person. I'm going to own an LLC, but inside of my LLC is that me and you are in it together. So we own it together. But if you give me money as an investor in an LLC, I got to split the profit with you, right? So you're going to give me the same 20 grand. How much of the profit makes sense for you, right? So all we got is the $250 as the mortgage payment. The rent's for, $800. We're making whatever the math is on that. Was that $600 or whatever? $600, or $550? Is half of $550 enough money for you to lend me 20 grand? That might not be enough for you.
Yeah.
I've had family members that I brought into deals and they told me, why would I give you 20 grand and you're going to give me back $300 a month? It's not enough money for me. Okay, cool. I literally had a cousin. I showed him where I invested. I showed him my numbers. I showed him how everything worked. He went and did it on his own. Because he's like, yeah, your numbers don't work for me. He didn't tell me he was going to go do it. He just went and did it. 8 months later, he had to sell the property. Had bad tenants on a bad block and didn't know how to manage it from a distance. They make it look easy. It's not that easy, right? So that's OPM with credit, with an investor, with investor money. The third way of funding is you have the money, right? You've saved up the money. You got it in your bank account. That works. You ain't got to worry about paying nobody back because you took it from your savings account.
Yeah.
The fourth way that nobody really talks about is like maybe me and one or two other people are talking about it is that I use insurance to fund my real estate deals. So I've created a whole life policy and I've been putting money and saving money in there. When I need money for a down payment, same 20 grand, I go and borrow it from my policy and I put it as a down payment. So now there's no one else for me to look at. But the difference between me pulling it from Chase to go do it and pulling it from my insurance policy is that in my insurance policy, I'm still making interest on that 20 grand like I never took it. When I pull out of Chase, it's going out of Chase. They stop giving me interest right away.
Yeah.
So the money that's inside of my insurance policy is now growing. but it's growing at way more of an interest rate, 4 to 6%, depending on the company I use. And it's growing tax-free. So now when I finish getting my cash flow of my property, let's say I want to do what the first guy is doing with the credit card payment, right? I got a $200 a month payment that I've forcibly put on myself. The insurance company's not asking me for $200 a month. I just said that I want to take $200 out of my cash flow and pay back that 20 grand.
Yeah.
Because once I pay it back, it's like a piggy bank. Once it's back in there, I can go borrow it again and do it again. That doesn't happen with the bank. That doesn't happen with the credit card. Well, it does happen with credit card, but you paid them a ton of interest to get it done. So there's 4 different ways to do it. All of them work because I've actually done all of them. Some of them have high levels of stress, and some of them are very easy to do.
So as somebody that's never invested into real estate, you know, from my perspective, and I'm sure you're going to tell me the difference, wouldn't an event space be more lucrative?
For what? Making money?
Yeah.
You tell me, is a podcast lucrative?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about this space, podcast, event space, Airbnb, what about that is different? So you could make more money, right? You give me the downside, like the cons of having any one of those 3. And then you give me the pros of having any one of those 3.
The downside is too many people.
Too many people in a space?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. Also, not enough people. Also a con.
Also a con.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more pros though.
So you're saying the pro is cash flow. You just make more money per month.
Yeah.
Right? You also got more work to do.
Not necessarily.
Absolutely.
How?
So if you are running now, what type of mindset, what type of event space owner are you? Are you the guy that's in there every day, opening the door, cleaning the floors?
No.
That depends on who you are, right? Because they don't tell you, they don't give you any of that stuff when you see it, right? So if I'm an event space owner and I want to go hire whoever to come in here and they're running my space, right? So I don't got to get up my bed. Someone's going to open the door. Someone's cleaning up. Someone's doing all of these things, right? Yes, the event space is making money. You got to not pay your staff to do it, right? Things go left in an event space. I have a family member that owns an event space. And so I've seen it from the beginning, like when it was nothing. You have a lot of things that can happen.
Absolutely.
Right? DOB, L&I, depending on where you live at. You've got physical altercations inside of a space. You got insurance problems. You've got people getting hurt at your space. My family member, they ran it. So they were in there every single day. It's a lot of work. Right? And when I say it's work in regards to a podcast or Airbnb, anything that has a lot of turnover, it's a lot more work. Right, that's just what it is. Granted, there's turnover and as a landlord, right? There's turnover that way too. But I don't think there's any event space owner that can tell me that they own an event space that they haven't been inside of in a year.
Neo.
I don't know how many event spaces Neo owns, so I'm not gonna get into that conversation with you right now. But I don't know any event space owners that have owned an event space that haven't been inside of it for a year. I have properties that haven't been inside of in a year. Tenants still in there, people still paying rent, and it's still standing. It's not like being destroyed, right?
No, I feel that. But I mean, you know, how often is it real for the LNIs and DOBs and all of that stuff to occur versus like, you know, if you have an event space, one weekend could pay that $3-4 grand rent for the event space or whatever. And, you know, when you have a tenant, that's only just that one income flux.
Right. So, I mean, there's different sides to the business, right? So as an event space, you can definitely, it's just like Airbnb. You can make a lot of money in 1 month with the Airbnb products. The issue that someone could run into, and this is not even for everybody, but if it's 2020 and you ask me about Airbnbs, this is not a good business now, right? If I'm in Atlanta, this is not a good business right now.
Yeah.
So it depends on the variables outside of your business, right?
Timing.
The timing makes a huge difference, right? Podcasts were not a thing 10 years ago.
They actually were.
Well, in the volume that they're being done now, right? Everybody's got a podcast.
Well, that's just like credit and real estate too, though.
real estate has always been around. They've done it 10 years, hundreds of years. It's always been a thing, right?
But now there's more fake people doing it.
I mean, I think there was always fake people doing real estate.
Now there's more fake people that's loudly doing it.
There's more people loudly saying they're doing it.
There we go.
Right? So everybody's, because they got the mic, bro. They can say whatever I want on this mic. But are they actually doing it, right? I mean, we was having a conversation about that earlier. There's a lot of people saying they're doing something they're not doing.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, you can make, it's a business like any other business, right? You can have a clothing store, make tons of money. You can sell widgets, or I love the little iPhone, the little things that you use to hold it. Yeah, I love those things. You can make tons of money with those things. There's a lot of different things you can do to make money. But what are you looking for, right? Because if I start having a conversation with you about an event space, on the front end, you're like, yo, I make so much money with the event space. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I'm happy for you. How much you pay in taxes though?
So wait, okay. So you propose something. So is it not real estate? Do I not get the same deductions I would get?
Hell no.
Why?
Because you don't own the event space most of the time. You renting the event space. So
that
you're
don't
paying
count, though?
No. For what? Part of your business. It's me asking you if inside of this suite here, do you get a write-off for the physical space? You don't. You get a tax deduction from the business.
I don't know who's watching this, so I'm not going to say anything. I don't know. Am I not supposed to?
So what are you getting a deduction for? You're getting a deduction for your lease payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay. I can say it then. Yeah, okay, cool.
You get a lease because that's a part of your business.
So what else do you get if you own it?
You get an actual, it's called depreciation.
So for the whole price?
For the whole place.
Every year?
Every year for 27 and a half years.
Wow.
And if I want to talk about, you're talking about accelerated depreciation, cost segregation, I can accelerate my write-off. So now let's just use this as an example. I have an event space business that makes millions of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. And I also own big pieces of property. When I need to write down my tax bill, I'm looking for the real estate to give me the depreciation. So let's say I got a write-off this year of $200,000 on my real estate. Mm-hmm. I'm going to lower my offset my business income by that $200,000 because as a person, all of your income comes back to the same place on the tax return. Mm. So I can write down, like I had depreciation as a paper loss. You didn't lose $200,000. Yeah. You just wrote down $200,000 of income. So you made $1 million, but yet you actually lost $200,000 over here. So your taxable income it's not on $1 million, it's on $800 now. You're paying less taxes. That does not happen in an event space unless they own the building. It doesn't happen in Airbnb unless they own a property. It doesn't happen in a podcast studio unless they own a podcast studio. You got to own real estate.
Got you. And so why do people still leave the country to get tax-free and go to like Colombia, Dubai?
You are not tax-free when you leave the United States. You are not taxed by the U.S. government when you give up your citizenship. There's a big difference. So there are a lot of people that live in Colombia and Dubai, and their business is taxed differently. But the person is still liable for U.S. taxes unless they give up their citizenship. Then you no longer owe Uncle Sam any tax revenue, because you're no longer a citizen of the United States. So the United States is not based on where you physically live. They're based on your citizenship. Now, Puerto Rico, they'll give you an additional benefit because they want to incentivize people to go to Puerto Rico. So you're paying I think it's like 4% or something ridiculously low if you live there for 181 days out of the year. Damn. So 6 months in a day, you only pay 4% on all the money you make. It don't matter how much it is. Versus 35% when you're living in other states.
Got you. Yeah.
But yeah.
That's hefty.
Yeah.
Wow. No, this was informative.
I'm glad I was able to teach you something.
I've had a lot of real estate people on here, and this is why I like having podcasts in this way, because I feel like you can just have a genuine conversation, and I don't ever do any research on anybody, because I'm gonna just hear how you talk and then go into different questions that make sense. But everybody has a different lesson to be learned and taught. Absolutely. And the expertise that you have, and you can hear it and you can say it because you've said some stuff. And every time I hear real estate, I get pumped up and I'm like, I'm gonna go buy a bunch of real estate. Yeah. I'm not, but I want to. You
should though. You want to. You definitely should.
And so the dynamic for me is I have fun in creating, and I'm a natural visionary. I've been self-employed or, whatever for a decade.
Okay.
And so, I've been doing this longer than people thought it was cool.
Right.
And, and I'm still young. I'm only 31 years old.
Right.
So I've been doing it for most of my adult life.
Yeah.
And so to me, I don't know. Like it's rough because them taxes definitely different. But real estate to me just feels so, it's going to sound a little crazy. It feels so old.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like wait. Like I want to curse people out. Like I have employees and contractors, and when Sims messes up, he's going to hear it.
Right.
When Dan messes up, like, and it's just part of the journey for that, like in building that. And it does come with struggles. Yeah. As everything probably does.
Absolutely.
But those dealing with those struggles, people would be like, oh man, your life would be easier if you just did this. And I'm like, you're right. It would be, but I don't want to.
Right.
I'm having fun in my life right now, and I don't have to worry about that.
Let me ask you a question then.
Oh man.
If you have the ability, so this is a very basic question, right? How many places can you be at one time?
Depends.
On what?
If I leave my cell phone there or not.
This is also true. But physically, you can only be in one place at one time, right? Yeah. And I can already tell you probably, climbed the ladder quite a bit in your financial journey, right? Your wealth journey. As you climb that ladder, you start to see perspective on things a little bit differently. And the higher you go, the more you realize that the purpose of money is a tool.
Yeah.
That tool, like a hammer or a screwdriver, should be used in the proper way for the proper things. So for you, chapter 1 of the book is going to tell you, from what you've already said to me, I am a passive, silent investor. That's how I want to be, because you don't get to really be creative you can be creative in real estate in certain ways, but for the most part, it's not a creative space.
Yeah.
You want things to be cookie cutter for a reason, because you want to dummy down and dummy proof almost all of it so that no one can mess it up by accident. And they still mess it up.
I believe that.
But in your role, in your position where you are in life right now, you partnering with someone who's one experience in the space that can give you the benefits of being an investor with none of the headaches. It's a slower moving animal, right? But the upside for you is the back end stuff, the taxes, the depreciation, the appreciation over time, right? And you're not necessarily looking for the money. So when you're not looking for it, it starts coming like, oh, I can take 50 grand right now. That's what's up.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not a day to day for you. And that's why I say, it's tried and tested. Like, this thing's been around for thousands of years for a reason.
So how much would it cost me of my own money to do that kind of method?
It depends on who you're talking to. With me, we're talking about at least 50 grand. With someone else, they might be like, yo, all I need is 10 grand for this particular deal. But it comes down to how much money do you need to see in a return for it to make sense for you?
Got it.
That's where it comes down. That's a personal question you have to answer.
Got it.
So if someone's telling you, give me 10 grand, I'm going to give you $300 a month, that might make sense for you. It might not. But if it does, and the person's, you vetted them out, they make sense, they know what they're doing, that might be just enough for you to get your feet wet, to get you going. Like, I like this. If you find anything else, let me know. And then you start talking to other people. Now you're still doing the creative stuff you love to do, but you've got a whole nother business. Your portfolio is growing very passively.
Yeah.
That you would be a passive investor.
Yeah.
Most people out here are not passive investors because they want to go get OPM and do it themselves. That's not a passive game. That's work.
Yeah. No, I have a company that I am a silent person in. Yeah. I am that actual guy.
There you go.
So that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Real estate is just another business. That's all it is. It's a slower business. That's it.
This was definitely informative. I appreciate your knowledge, your gem drops and everything, and just the time that you take to come on the show. Even though you're from Queens, you're very well spoken.
Listen, man. I heard you went to high school in Queens, man. I think you love Queens.
Because I was too bad in Brooklyn. I had to go to the watered down version.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna let you go with that one. But
thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you want to leave the people with?
what I would like to say is educate yourself, invest in yourself first and foremost. You know, you never make a bad investment when you betting on you. So if you want to get a hold of me, follow me on the socials, Andre_talks_green on all of them. Check out the book. We're doing pre-sales right now. It'll be out officially in May 2024. So I'm not sure when this podcast comes out, but it might be out by then. So longdistancemillionaire.com is the actual website. And, you know, I welcome everyone to be an owner and to get wealthy.
Absolutely. Well, Andre, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you guys tap in. Book should be out by the time this episode is out. And listen, like, share, subscribe. A lot of knowledge dropped on this podcast. Don't hold it to yourself. Even if you know you're only going to watch 10 minutes and you don't make it, skip to the end of this video, watch this part, then send it to somebody else first, you know. But as we always say, it's your host, Moneybag Rich here. And we look good. We live good. Life is good. Talk to us. We talk.